Alright, before we can create a page for our podcasts, it might be a good idea to actually have some podcasts. Now, I'd refer you to the other video on the different types of equipment you can use to create a podcast, but I'm going to show you one of the easiest ones right here. If we're just talking audio, if your computer has a microphone, you can turn your computer into a digital recording device. Every Windows program has a program called, in the accessories folder, called Sound Recorder. And Sound Recorder should be set up nicely to your microphone. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start recording, and I'm going to record a first episode of our podcast on podcasting. Hello, we're going to do a podcast on podcasting. This is episode 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, now obviously you're going to be a little more detailed than that, but just wanted to show that one to you. Alright, so here's episode 1. And the default for this is Windows Media Audio, and that'll work. You can also record into video and other audio formats, like MP3 is the most popular one. Alright, but that's not enough. We want to be able to update it, so I'm going to make another episode so that I can add it to my School Center site later. Alright, hi, this is episode 2 of the podcast on podcasting. This one I'm going to use to update my podcast on podcasting. Hope you enjoy. Alright. Now these are obviously just sample podcasts here, but now that I've got those files there, let's go make a place to put them. So open up your Windows Internet Explorer or Firefox or whatever you got there to browse the web. Go to the Friendship website. You want staff. You can also go to the teacher launch in the high school site. Website login. So down here on the main page. And I'm going to assume you're familiar with some of the basic workings of School Center. If you're not, seek training immediately. But that would kind of go beyond the scope of this particular tutorial. Alright, once you log in, you'll want to go to your page. I happen to have a separate page just for percussion. Okay, now from here you'll want edit. And the first thing you're going to do is create a new page. And a dialog box will open up that looks like this. Now in this dialog box, these are all the different types of pages you can create. For a podcast, there's only one that will function, and that's this one, the Document Manager. So add a Document Manager page, and this window will pop up. So since our page that I'm building here is a podcasting podcast, I'll put a podcasting podcast as my title. And the subdirectory thing, one quick note about that, if you want to avoid having to use all of this PHP formula stuff when you're explaining to people where to go, like your students and parents, well, go to my podcast on this website address or in iTunes. Well, it's going to be a lot easier if you give them a subdirectory so that instead of doing friendship.us/education staff.php, all that stuff up there, you can just say, look, just go to friendship.us/podcasting-podcast. Or yours might be, Mrs. Smith's podcast, or math podcast, or mathcast, or whatever. Okay? Now, that's optional. You don't have to do that, but I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. Makes your life a lot easier when you're trying to explain where exactly your content is. Enable podcast support. This is very crucial. This is so that you can actually incorporate this into iTunes at a later step. So go ahead and click that now. If you want to know what details and meta are, then again, seek training on School Center. But this is basically all you got to do to get started here. And then here's your page. Now your page is not going to show up in your navigation until you go to Edit Navigation. Okay, now I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to keep this one not published. It still exists, it's just not going to be published, so you can't find it unless you know exactly where you're going to. It's kind of like that island in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Anyway, so we've got our page. Well, what about those podcast files that I just created? Well, new document, and I know we associate document with Word files and such, but really it can be anything in School Center. So when you hit the new document window, or button, this is the window that pops up. And again, School Center training, let's do standard mode. It's going to work on everyone's computer the best. You're going to browse. Hopefully you remembered where you put those podcast files on your computer, okay? And make sure if you used a device like an iPod, an iPod Touch, or a digital voice recorder, or a flip video, make sure you've already transferred the content off of that device and onto your computer. Alright, browse. I remember where I left that stuff. Remember Podcast on Podcasting, Episode 1. And here it is, it's uploading, scanning, done. Sure, I'll call it that. This is a good chance for you to change the type, the title of the piece. If you don't like all these underscores, you can take them out. Hit done. You can add a description if you want. Oh, and look, this is missing the following required data. If you want to be able to incorporate this into iTunes, you need to fill out these 4 items, and then we'll kind of cover what those do in iTunes in the next episode of our little tutorial here. But for right now, let me show you what that dialog window looks like, and we can go ahead and fill it out. So it's already got the title there, a podcast on podcasting. I'm the owner. This is my email. And it will help if you go ahead and put categories. Mine would probably be music, but I guess technically it's technology since it's a podcast on podcasting. Hey look, they already thought of me in the subcategory. Now the iTunes URL you'll be putting in later. Okay, that you'll get after you have already subscribed this podcast into iTunes. Click on done, the red box will go away. And now you have a page with 1 podcast on there. Alright, and that'll be the first step, okay? So make sure that you have created that document manager in School Center, enabled podcast support, and I need you to upload at least 1 podcast episode. And for the purposes of this class, it would be good if you went ahead and did something that is relevant to your course. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes long. It could be 5 minutes long. It could be a short little lesson or some extra content that you want your students to learn. Alright, so create that page and then upload your file and then start watching the next video.